Canada is a country. Waves of people came to this country, were welcomed by the folks who've lived here for millennia, the First Nation. And built this society with waves of people fleeing religious prostitution, fleeing tyranny, fleeing to try and build a better life for themselves here than they had back home. Whether it's folks fleeing from world wars or fleeing from civil wars, these people always want the same thing: to be able to live in peace, to raise their families, to create a better future for themselves and their communities. And that is what generations created this extraordinary, diverse society we have. Now, Canada remains one of the only countries in the world where citizens are, by and large, positively kind. And one of the reasons we are that way is because Canadians have confidence in our people.
Dude, MKCANADA, right? How's it going? Hey, and look, Kurt,
Yo,
this beautiful mother. Look at this Ryan-faced, long-haired. Look at him. It's funny the kind of things he posts on the Twitter. Aha!
The damn hippie.
I love the book you just came out with. It's being published right now. It can't be purchased yet, but can be pre-ordered. Do you have?
No, it's been out for a week now. It's like
it is
dwarfed my first book launch, so I'm pretty psyched about that.
Well, yeah, do you go to ryanstone.com? Is that what you want from me?
No, it's on Amazon. It's Praxeology Volume 1 Frame.
This guy is just so hot and special. He's got his Amazon published book. Okay, hold on.
But no, like, yeah, do you know,
I'm just gonna write Ryan Stone,
like, obviously, you know, on Twitter how, like, I get a bunch of guys just to lose their absolute mind on me, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's kind of like a marketing thing.
Like, you got confused men that are like, I want to be Andrew Tate so I can have Michaela Peterson. It's all weird. I don't know. Keep going.
But yeah, so they're my marketing, like showing guys who have no frame and the stupid things they do. And I'm like, here, it's kind of like sort of stoicism, but it's not not stoicism. It's basically like how you define your own personal worldview. So that way that you can act towards the world without losing your mind. It's like you want to make sure you give the appropriate amount of F's for a situation. Just to get guys to be less emotional. And there's like a whole framework around it. The guys... Like, there's a whole group of guys that have been building it. It took like, oh, ouch, that was bad. It took us about a decade of work to get there. And so, yeah, it's been pretty awesome. And it's everything from fitness to nutrition to health to being your own psychiatrist to how do you want to handle discussions on like everything a guy could ever want to know. And some guy has asked it before, figured out a system, and I just wrote it down. So, yeah.
So what is the deal then? So you're telling us how to self-actualize. What is it that you think a man should be? Or is it
not
they have their own goals?
No, not the should. That's actually one of the big parts is that the should, David Hume calls it categorical imperatives, right? Like Christians say you need to live like this, so you should be doing this to be a good boy. Feminists want guys to do a certain thing. Like everybody wants a guy to do what's best for them, but never for the guy himself. So this is for those guys who have never just thought, what do I want out of life? And it gives you a framework to figure it out for yourself. I would never dare tell a guy what he should do in his life. And it's probably the first guy who's ever tried to do any type of self-help stuff that never told a guy how to live.
Okay, so I'm going to get this book for Kurt. Kurt, tell me a little bit about what you've been going through this week.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
No, you're good. I've just been thinking about it. I've been trying to really enjoy solitude, I guess.
Oh, I think you need to turn your mic settings to your actual input mic. I think you're using your computer input.
Okay, hold on.
But while you're figuring that out, I was going to say this is interesting to me because a lot of guys I know, and I think of Kurt specifically as a very selfless man who spent a lot of time trying to help other people, and it comes off in your personality that you are focused on. Yeah, that's more along the lines of what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Kit, you made it too. Kit, we'll introduce you in a second. Kurt, go on with what you were doing this week.
Okay. So I've been trying to focus as much on my current musical project this week as I possibly can, and it's anytime I feel like it's like racking my brain a little bit, I feel like I'm going in the right direction. So, like we talked before about how basically I'm trying to compose different melodies for each ear, or at least like have the binaural word, that thing going on. So like with that project that you're seeing there, I start to experiment a little bit with it, but I didn't fully flesh out the idea. So at this point, I have like 20, I have two 10-minute songs of just like electronic music that is designed to do that. And so the third song is also going to be up that alley, but now I'm starting to try out different dimensions. And I think I'm getting to new territory in one specific avenue. I'm playing around with certain tracks, and it would take a while to actually explain what I'm doing. I'm not trying to like be up my own butt. It's hard to explain. With certain parts of the track, within each measure of the beat, or at least each couple of measures, I'm playing around with very slight tempo adjustments from the beginning to the end of the measure, to where it's like almost sub-perceptual, and it repeats.
But might mess with your heart rate a little bit.
So
yeah,
isochronic
maybe
tones, for instance.
Yeah, I don't know. There might be some examples of that, but I don't know how much it actually occurs. I think that's one area people haven't really experimented with much. So after, and I'm taking that, so then I'm taking like the entire counter melody or the inversion of that melody and doing like a whole new section, and then with the whole tempo changes, I'm reversing those changes in the new section. So there's like a huge aspect of symmetry in what I'm doing with the melody. Like if you look at it, it like looks like an eagle or something, you know, like in the pure MIDI. But it ends up, if you stay within a key, that can have actually really surprising effects when you go for that certain level of symmetry. So like, yeah, that
so working on symmetry and mind control with pop music, which is like the best goal I think anyone can have, probably.
So wait, this is like the Coltrane changes for EDM?
I don't. That's
not really EDM. What he does, he's got real guitar and stuff, so he does everything. He's doing
just the Coltrane changes with the guitar. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, but it's like, so the Grateful Dead used to have these big machines that would play sounds at different times in order to give you this weird headache that would give you binaural, like you would try to acclimate and you could fall over if they played it wrong, right? And so he's using we're trying to get him to use some of those binaural tones, as well as he's using a bunch of symmetry, so you're watching as something physically falls and escalates. But I kind of wanted to ask also, Ryan, what do you think about this? Like, so this guy, he used to work for everyone else all the time. He has to deliver pizza. He's got to deal with women that have been abused by other men, right? And now he's making music, and that's his dream. So like, is that part of self-actualization?
Part of it, like the first part, is the altruism. You realize that a lot of it is just lighting yourself on fire to keep other people warm. But the thing is, it's like, it's not easy just to say, well, just stop doing things for other people, because that's not really very helpful either. So, for example, I show how early failed parenting strategies help encourage kids to act a certain way that maybe caused this from an underlying issue, or sometimes guys do it because of a covert like not you, but some guys do it as a covert contract where they always want the reciprocation. And if somebody doesn't reciprocate with kindness, then it builds up a cycle of resentment. And it's just a way of shedding a lot of this kind of stuff to have more healthy ways. Like, there's nothing saying you can't be generous, but at the same time, you do it in a way that makes sure you aren't being taken advantage of, because you have to actually think of yourself like you have value. And so part of that is that everything you have has value, so you don't just give it away. Otherwise, nobody else will value it either. It's like the crass joke I make is you wipe your ass every day without complaint. And so the least you could do is treat that guy pretty well, you know?
That's nice. Kit, as a metaphysicist, bonsoir, Kit. No, sorry. If you want to continue to vape, that's completely, I do that too. But I was going to ask you, bonsoir, Kit, and you are from Quebec, is that correct? You're muted, sorry, and a bit frozen. This might be. Can you hear? Hello?
No.
Hey.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Where are you?
Okay.
Where are you?
I actually live in the United States, in Arkansas.
Oh, cool.
So,
You're not from French Canada. That's hilarious.
Yeah, very far removed.
I'm gonna
but,
treat everyone from Arkansas like they are from French Canada because I love equality. But at the end of the day, okay,
My
you're
cat
also
is
studying
named
metaphysics.
Gay.
Oh, really? Okay, so you like
yeah.
French. You study metaphysics?
Yeah, not like professionally at a university or anything. I ain't looking,
Thank God.
of course not.
Right?
But
Those liberal arts schools. But what do you think
yeah,
about what would you comment on the individuality of the self, right? Because he's talking about the importance. Ryan's talking about the self. You have to maintain the self. But at the end of the day, aren't we all part of each other? Which is how they try to convince us that we need to take care of everyone else than ourselves.
that last point you brought up is something I hadn't thought of, but everything else I agree with. Like, my essential metaphysical viewpoint is that there's the physical world made of baryonic matter that we're familiar with perceiving on an everyday basis, and then there is the world where any non-physical entity exists, like just abstracted data, information, that kind of thing. And it's currently my hypothesis, maybe more like speculation, that when early humanity, as they developed consciousness into something more like our modern form of consciousness, they sort of like formed this like illusion between the concepts of nothing and everything. And so
You think like clockwork elves
like
and things
in
like that
regards
are real?
Do what?
Do you think that clockwork elves are real? Like the
I'm
idea
sorry, I
that there's
didn't
like clockwork elves, DMT clockwork elves?
I've never tripped quite hard on DMT enough to confirm if they actually call themselves machine elves. If they call themselves machine elves, I'll accept it. But
But you think there's a consciousness there? Ryan, what about you? Do you think there's a consciousness?
Absolutely believe.
The world is a person. So I think that's the best like metaphor to
You're
try
muted,
to
Ryan. Oh, but go ahead, Chris.
sorry, Ryan.
I was typing on the thing. I'm my bad. Like a collective consciousness.
You do hack kind of as loud as one of those woodpeckers. It's incredible. Like really.
I got heavy fingers.
And coffee there.
Like I don't.
Do you believe in consciousness, like persons, Geist? What do you think about Geist and your own soul? Any of that?
It's one of those weird things. I try not to think about too much because it's very easy to speculate, but it's hard to know. So it's almost one of those things you just take your best guess and go with it. For me, I'm really just cynical and jaded. So I assume there isn't one, but I really want to be wrong, you know?
So yeah, so you assume there isn't a soul, but what do you think about like Hegelian Geist? Like the idea like you're self-actualizing, you think you're just this really amazing spontaneous machine, or what like what
for that part of stuff. You know what? I like how Nietzsche put it, but not the way that people say Nietzsche put it, where he talks about, God is dead. So you build your own. That was the second part nobody ever followed.
Right,
So as far as self-actualization and meaning in that, I enjoy how nothing matters. It's all subjective. And now you're free. I love it. Just pick something that works. If it works, go with it. The things will change. And as the world changes, you need to change along with it or you'll wither and die. So I guess in a sense it is you connected to everything, but it's almost closer to the world is dragging you along on its journey and you got to hold on for dear life and make sure you dodge and weave. Kind of like a game of, what's that stupid game they always play on the TikToks where you just dodge in buses? That makes sense. What a convoluted metaphor.
Frogger, I'll take Frogger.
You guys are here with these fancy $5 words and I'm coming in here like a farmer.
Your book's called Praxology. You're not allowed to pretend.
I like acting.
Say?
Oh, sorry?
You were part of the armed forces, right?
Yeah, Royal Canadian Navy.
Oh, Navy, that's cool.
It's
was
the
there
Navy.
a follow-up question? It was just he just wants to imagine you in a uniform.
Well, I was assuming he was also a veteran. We're going to hear some war stories or something.
Oh,
or you
no.
did some.
I just have personal interest in that general field.
See,
So.
I told you he's imagining you in a uniform. But
Oh,
what about
nice.
death? Okay, so as a cynic and as an optimist, you're talking about death being the end, or what is it at least? Because it can't really be the end. There's nothing from nothing leaves nothing.
Well,
Gotta
ask
have
me again
something.
in a couple years. I'll figure it out.
But I
It's
mean,
just
come
I'm
on,
perfectly
right.
happy just to let the winds blow you where they do, man.
we're headed towards losing our minds, losing our memories, losing our bodies, and then what's after that? Is it just end? Is that just like the solace from all the suffering, or
If I knew, I would be the wisest man on earth. I am actually excited for the surprise. I know, like, we're talking MK Ultra, I should be giving you guys like a thing, but I'm just like, I enjoy surprises. It's like
Yeah.
a surprise birthday party, but I don't want to treat it like, remember the 80s movies tropes where they were going to throw the kid a party, but he thought nobody loved him, so he runs away from home, and then he found out they were having the party the whole time. I want it to be closer to that.
So on the other spectrum, so people who don't want to be surprised, they're asking you to get like your consciousness uploaded for immortality, and then you can see it. You can see exactly the boundaries of what can be animated, reanimated, and immortal. It's only a virtualization. It's missing a lot of things, but there's something there. How many people would you yourself consider, as you get older, you're starting to lose your mind and body, like going for the digital upload route because you can see it? It's not a surprise.
Dude,
you know
you know
exactly
what?
you get.
Do you remember the argument they make for teleporters in Star Trek?
Which
Where
one?
like the
We don't
teleporter, everybody's like,
matter?
oh, you get to teleport. No, it actually kills you and remakes you somewhere else.
Right,
That's
yeah.
the same
this-
thing in Stargate.
Yeah, so this upload of your consciousness thing terrifies me because it's just killing you and then putting up one of them like a Hollow Man version of you.
Yeah,
To me, it
absolutely.
seems like extremely dystopic. I'm just gonna start calling that like lifelong Canadian
At
healthcare.
least
You know what I mean?
What do you say, Kit?
Oh, I was just saying, at least with like the currently proposed methods for transhumanist ideas like that.
Right. Yeah. So that's the thing is maybe at some point that consciousness could imprint onto a new person and then they have emotions or something. But the thing is, you see it and you don't see what happens after you die, except a lot of people for thousands of years have talked about it. Like they plant you under a tree, people eat the fruit, you become part of the community. There's some amount of you that's still in everybody or everything. I mean, there's that is the traditional way in a lot of ways, or to separate yourself, put yourself in some sarcophagus so nobody can get at you or something like that. But they've all these goals a lot of time seem to focus on. A lot of people don't want to die. I think dying is the thing that people want to avoid the most a lot of the time. And it's the thing that Canada is pushing the hardest right now that people would choose. Like, well, your quality of life isn't very good. Wouldn't you rather die? And I just wonder, how is that possible? How can people get to a point of lacking in self-actualization where they're willing to trade to just do that?
Dude, the community. Honestly, that scares the shit out of me when I see. Sorry for swearing. When you see
It
people
happens.
talking like that in Canada, and I think it's a lot of it is the bureaucracy, the fact that there's a community of people that say it's okay. So a lot of people just assume it's okay. Like we're very collective minded. We're social creatures. That's how we adapted to the world,
Right. Just surviving the winter together.
Yeah, and so you see people taking full advantage of people that are both like psychologically susceptible to things. They're also down on their luck, and they want to be like, I mean, if you're a homeless guy on the street, or if you're that poor that you don't get to see people, you're socially isolated. And the fact that you have a group, yeah, come on in, we'll take you. Just one cost.
There are cavemen that we found the remains where there are injuries that have like severe, where they would not be able to walk around, get food or anything, and they healed because other people would bring them food and keep them alive. And this is like prehistory when like you had to literally go kill your food.
Jeez, return
So,
to
like-
monkey, man.
Yeah, apparently.
I mean, advocates argue it would be discriminatory to deny assisted suicide to patients with mental illnesses.
They are
But-
ghouls.
Have you ever met
Ghouls.
someone without a mental illness by like today's standards? Like, what is mental illness? Let's talk about that for a second. So the World Health Organization definition of health. Just talk about the full-on definition of health. So this is their little map here. So you've got to have a couple things. Actually, no, a trinity of things. You have to have mental health, yeah, and physical health, but you need to have social health. Right. And so they consider you mentally unhealthy, the World Health Organization, if you do not have the sense of us, right? The capacity for relating to us and to others and control capacity for navigating social spaces. really they want you to have the mental health to work, the physical health to work, and the social health to want to work and to feel the obligation to society. And if you don't have that, then you've got a mental disorder. I mean, according to the World Health Organization.
It looks like they ripped off Maslow's hierarchy, to be honest with you.
It's not a pyramid, but I think it's even better. Honestly, I think the pyramid, we could do that for a second. Maslow hierarchy. The problem, I think, as it being a pyramid is it's kind of like the bread pyramid, like this isn't necessarily, I think self-actualization probably is a kernel that grows outwards. You probably start with a self-actualization in physiological, because if you don't, you could probably go through physiological and safety by trying to become more of a slave, a house slave, or you can easily not use self-actualization to reach esteem, right? There's plenty of people that their esteem comes from being the butt of jokes or being, safely part of a group that abuses them, right? The littler bully or something like that.
Doesn't sound healthy though to you, does it? Or to me? I don't know if
it doesn't sound healthy at all. That's the problem with this idea that it's a pyramid, because you can go the wrong direction from a pyramid. I don't think it really is a pyramid. I think it is probably closer to some sort of escapisces. But I don't know if the social health is the way they describe it. I'm always concerned about the World Health Organization, and if they could get you to say, hey, you don't like working, so I guess it's time to die, right?
Yeah. I don't know, just the governance. Did you know the people in Canada that set policy for the MAID program are currently the greatest practitioners? The lady that's in charge of it, not even a doctor, it's like an advocacy NGO. She's done more MAID, she's killed more people than anybody else in the program, and she's the one defining what good and bad all best practices are.
What's the largest mass murder in Canada again? Because I'm pretty sure it's less than 400 something that she's already killed.
Oh yeah, she did 400. There's another one that did 300. I can't remember that one's name, but yeah, the mass murders, I think Picton is probably the biggest one, and he's not even close. I think he was barely double digits.
Yeah, I think he got 20 something.
Yeah.
I thought there was a lot more
the Technic shooter. Yeah, him too.
37, 22, 14. Okay.
Yes.
But yeah.
Still an order of magnitude less, and that's just
right. Yeah. Yeah, you can't beat bureaucracy. It's just a lot more.
And my theory is this psychopath found a way to make her prevalence legal. It's the best answer I've got, because there's meetings that they have, and other doctors are like, yeah, people who are poor are coming and asking to get this done. What do we do? And she's like, well, if you kill enough of them, then the government has to change the policy. I'm like, who talks like that?
People that wanted to make marijuana legal used to talk that way. But I mean, Trudeau, he's kind of stepped back, right? He's kind of walked back a bit of the MAID stuff, or they just kind of waiting because it's going to take another season for people to react less strongly to it or something. I mean, or are they going to go through with this? It seems like they were kind of walking it back. Or what do you
mean go through? The one for the mature minors?
Yeah, MAID 13. I think mature minors, they might not do this season. They'll wait next season or something like that. And
dude, I don't even know.
But are they still doing the poverty and depression one though? Because
yeah,
telling someone who's depressed to kill themselves is that's abusive at the very least, especially
and the veterans too. Yeah,
position of power over them. Just no.
Yeah, I love that. We had our Paralympic gold medalist / veteran. They told her that, and she just put them on blast. I was like, good on you. Good on you, soldier.
I just can't believe it. How, and so are people not suing? Are they suing when someone suggests this to them? Because
that's just it. You can't sue because it's legal.
Imagine you told someone to this would be considered cyberbullying if it was on the internet. I don't even know how. I couldn't even say here what they're telling people. They're suggesting to people to do, because you would consider that attempted murder, right? Or some kind of instigation to commit suicide. There are, arrested for cyberbullying, suicide. If you look this up, you'll find preteens, girls, 12-year-olds, all kinds of people arrested for convincing people that were depressed that they should just end it, right?
Yeah.
This is considered to be murder, the worst possible kind, and now we're talking about doing this on a massive scale. How is it that you can't sue these people or have them arrested for trying to instigate?
Because it's legal, and the person it's like trying to sue a police officer for giving you a speeding ticket. That's the legal framework of it right now. And that's the really crappy position, because I didn't hear a thing about this until last year, and it came out in 2016. Crazy, isn't it?
So yeah,
imagine someone just tells you hey, I don't know. I really want to die. And then your response is like, well, have you thought about killing yourself? You know, it's it's like having even the premise or the possibility is like, it's like one of the examples of where a slippery slope actually happens. You know, like, yeah, you have the actual premise, and therefore the premise dictates the attitude, and the attitude could be cold and heartless and uncaring, and an admission of like, oh, we just don't actually care about solving your problems or giving you the network that you need to stay alive. We've just admitted that we don't care anymore, and therefore like, we're gonna let yourself down easy, you know, because that's less of a burden on us. That's a dangerous dynamic. It's because the other complete side of it is, well, how much sovereignty does a person have over their own life? Like, are you owned by the state? Can the state tell you not to take your own life? I think there are very interesting ways to analyze this on both sides. And I don't know. I feel like if someone really wants to die and they don't want to tell anybody, I mean, I think they're going to succeed. But maybe it should just one of those examples of just true neutral where there is no
right.
standard.
Why do we decriminalize marijuana? Right. We don't make it legal. So the idea of making legalizing this is the same as industrializing. We're making it an assembly line. It's like, okay, well, it needs to be provided now. Some people believe governance isn't negative governance, the idea of restricting governance from taking away your rights. Some people think governance is positive governance, socialist governance, where they have to provide you with the rights that they give you. The government has to give you these services. So everyone needs to have equal access to it, meaning more and more people,
I would grant you that.
Children.
If it was like you go to a doctor and say, I want to get, enough, like 2 doses of however much morphine you need to kill somebody.
Fentanyl.
And they bought it and they took it home and they did whatever. Like, maybe that's like a little libertarian on there, but yeah, because people can kill them, or people can get the Canadian healthcare whether you want them to or not.
Yeah, but
if the government was just doing a case so that you could make it painless on yourself and not ruin your floors, I'd be all for it. But this is not what we're dealing with, man.
Right. This must cost at least as much as like an cesarean section. You have to get a surgeon in, essentially. The poison and everything, the drug, like they have to be there, watch it. It's expensive to pay all these people. So there's definitely money in it.
Oregon,
somebody would
normally the way it's set up now, they do. So they're making money off everything.
Because you guys have that too. You're in California. You guys have the exact same program.
We've made in California?
Yeah.
I'm in Minnesota.
That was the big. Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting. Why do I keep thinking you're in? Oh,
because I'm from there, and I will go back there, and it's going to be, what it is. But right
here's
now,
the thing:
like
do you know how many people in the MAID program every year are euthanized in California? Like 400. In Canada, it's 10,000, and we have the same populations.
Well, we did. I don't know if we do anymore.
Dude, that's harsh. I don't mean to laugh.
Euthanasia laws. Oh wow, that's insane. Vincent's made it. So we're talking about how you guys aren't special, Vincent. You guys think you're so cool. You're always like starting trends. I know how all the Canadians, they think that they invent stuff. They invented MAID and euthanasia. Well, I'll tell you what, you crazy guys think you're so cool. We have euthanasia too. We're just like you. We even have poutine, but let's focus on the euthanasia.
You guys got poutine?
I had the greatest poutine the other day. It had like steak on it. It was like the Americanized poutine with like mushroom gravy. It put you guys to shit. Anyway, euthanasia.
If it doesn't have cheese curds, it's not poutine, okay?
Bro, the cheese curds.
Adamant on this.
I love cheese curds. Mega soda. Anyway, California euthanasia laws, assisted suicide, patients' rights. Long story short, it looks like in 2015, we passed ours. So we did it first. Is that right? Did we win the euthanasia race in Canada?
About the same.
You said 2016, I thought you said.
Yeah, but it took effect in 2016, so same as us.
Fine.
You might have. Okay, you guys did yours a month earlier. Go USA.
The point is Canada and California have similar names and similar ideologies, and they both like euthanasia laws, apparently, according to Legal Beagle. So that's messed up. So you're saying 400 people a year about in California versus 10,000 though in Canada, and it's been going on since 26. So 8 years it's been going on in Canada.
Well, to be fair, there was a big backlog of people who were not getting any healthcare for decades.
They're like, "What do you got?" Yeah. Oh my god.
If you guys ever want to hear about an extreme, terrifying, and dystopic town in
Whichever.
in the United States. Whitehall, Arkansas. It's
White what?
technically a suburb of a larger city, Pine Bluff. It's fucking crazy.
I'm
It's
going
the
there.
home
Now, so I'm not going
of
to
one of
physically
the
go there.
first U.S. ever built.
And so so like a Civil War, a community.
And and it's separated into Pine Bluff and Whitehall as a way to get past segregation, basically. You know who lives in Whitehall?
Persons
White
of color. Oh darn it!
Oh,
Yeah, I
so they're
kind of got
full on Jim Crowy
Yeah.
there.
So they even have an entire little miniature town for the Roman people in the area. It's so fucked up.
That's
Sorry,
so. I didn't even
swear
think
to.
this stuff exists anymore.
I mean, in the South, they sure do, for sure.
Look up
but you
the
know what's
Pine Bluff
weird?
Arsenal.
What do I look up? What do I look up?
The Pine Bluff Arsenal.
Pine Bluff Arsenal.
It helps. Yeah, it helps with
Whoa.
chemicals like Agent Orange and
Dude.
EZ,
Whoa.
which is like this nightmare hallucinogen. Up
Oh,
until
man. QB.
1998.
They made QB at Pine Bluff. Thank you. I've always wondered
And
where
it
QB
leaked
was made.
multiple times during my childhood.
Dude, what's up? Kevin made it in the house. We're talking about this Arkansas segregated town called Pine Bluff where they have Whitehall, and it's where white and black people are separated. But it's also where the Pine Bluff Arsenal is, which is this crazy building. And it's where they made a bunch of crazy things like Agent Orange. I think you're talking about napalm and some other things as well. But then you mentioned QB, which is the weird friggin' Asian Orange Sunshine drug that they were giving at the Folsom State Prison to people like Johnny Cash and Charles Manson and military personnel, the airborne LSD. So it's interesting coming out of Arkansas.
Wait, what was that
I'm
Johnny
sorry,
Cash
actually-
story?
Remember Johnny?
BZ.
So
Johnny
if you
Cash,
see, Johnny Cash was sent to the Folsom prison.
He's
Right.
that big. He's that guy on Twitter. He's like really big on YouTube.
Yeah, that was when he did that concert in the prison.
Right. Cash had recently controlled his drug abuse problems and was looking to turn his career around, right? So part of the deal was he got to do a public show, he got to do some TV spots on drugs, and he had to do some research chemical tests for the government. And so he took this stuff called QB, which QB psychedelic, I don't even know what I'm going to look to find QB. If I type in acid dreams, maybe.
It's probably very
Or what-
similar to BZ.
Yeah. QB and BZ are just like connected to Bromo Dragonfly. And so a lot of the people who took it never got better. And so he was lucky to an extent. And I think Rick Rubin really helped him do some like meditation work and stuff like that. Johnny Cash's son actually follows us on Instagram now. But so apparently it was really messed up.
Awesome.
And they drugged out a lot of people that were, they like, you come through and then they could arrest you. They're like, hey, you're fine. Just like go with the flow. You do a TV spot for us and there's some weird stuff. And you can watch some of these like 60s anti-LSD propaganda, like educational videos, right? And they had like super famous people in them a lot of the time.
If you've ever seen the film,
What's it? Shares Sonny Bono did one of those as well, and there's a couple where you can watch the people on. There's a couple of videos where they're getting high. They took the drug before they made the reel, and so by the end of the 20-minute reel, like you can see he's super screwed up, which is pretty crazy that they did that in the 60s. Kevin, what have you been up to this week? Or Happy New Year's also.
Yeah, man. Likewise, happy New Year.
there's one called Jacob's Ladder that was in the 90s.
Oh, I remember that.
Oh yeah,
That freaked me out as a kid.
Jacob's Ladder.
Yeah.
That's what Silent Hill is based on.
Oh.
Silent Hill is based on Jacob's Ladder.
Yeah, inspired by Jacob's Ladder.
How so? How LSD, Tibetan Buddhism, and Tim Robbins combined to create a cult classic.
Yeah. Robbins.
Who directed that? Who directed Jacob's Ladder?
Adrian Lean. I don't know.
I'm gonna laugh if we find out it's like the same universe as Shawshank Redemption or something.
I
I
don't
wouldn't
remember.
be too surprised.
Very-
Yeah, I don't really know. I don't remember very well Jacob's Ladder, what it's about. I know this, the story in the Bible though, the scone stone.
That's
is
always been
Jacob's
my
ladder.
family.
Yeah. It's interesting because in the Bible you've got like Jacob and was it like some
Yeah, going up the stairs to heaven.
Well,
yeah, Abraham and his sons, Isaac and Ishmael. And then
Gabriel, his son, or
Isaac
I
has
think it's-
Jacob. Jacob runs off with the blessing of Esau. He falls asleep from running underneath the scone stone as a pillow. That scone stone is there where he sees the ladder, which is angels ascending and descending upon the scone stone. And then that's why British people always argue how many tens of thousands of angels can dance on the head of a pin. And then from there, they brought the scone stone to England, which is the scone stone throne. And that's where they crown people. So to get crowned, you have to, there's a stone. It's right there. That's supposed to be Jacob's pillow stone that he saw Jacob's ladder on.
Neat.
Pretty cray.
psychedelic technology.
But you're in California, Kevin. What have you been seeing? Is it flooding where you're at?
No, it's been raining a bunch though last couple of days, man. It's been you're what? You're further up north, man. You guys got hit hard, right?
Yeah, they're closing down huge parts of
Yeah.
Santa Cruz, and it's pretty insane. Sacramento is flooded. Stockton's flooded. Parts of Santa Cruz are closed, even though photos of Santa Cruz County's Twitter show Capitola Wharf essentially split in half, right? So there's the Capitola Wharf destroyed.
Whoa.
Huge waves, a lot of crazy stuff. And boats have been crashed in. Unfortunately, a lot of the town isn't even in a bad spot, but they've just evacuated anyway because they're gridlocked. And parts of those areas, they're technically part of the grid, so they just have to evacuate the whole grid. And so then there's also people that go around and rob houses because everyone else has been pushed out, but some people are just going around, but usually they're pretty good at stopping that. But yeah, it's pretty crazy, man, because the other thing is we had that huge fire a few years ago, so basically that destroyed a lot of the root structures, and so the mountains are having a lot of landslides now, which is pretty terrible.
Yeah, when's the last time you guys got hit with like a flood like that?
Not like this, but we had a pretty big rain season in 2016 or 2017. I think it was right after Trump was elected. All the reservoirs filled, which totally pissed off California because they're like, dang it, now there's nothing to complain about.
You get a lot of mudslides when that happens, though, right?
Mudflies, is that what they're called? Or mudslides. Yeah, so we had a lot of mudslides. So I did an interview at one point with Wendy Shaw, who does the voice of Francine on American Dad.
Really?
Right? Yeah, that lady. So she's cool. And Francine. But what happened was her house, she just got this new house, and then the storms hit, and it got totally buried under mud. And so we were doing a lot of things on mud flood and the history of mud flood. And she's like, yep. And this is her in that movie, The Burbs, in case you need to see Wendy Shaw. But yeah. Pretty cool though, because like the whole interest in Tartaria and how many times mud floods have happened over time, it's pretty crazy. Like we were talking about Back to the Future 2, right? And in Back to the Future 2, they have lost all their records, right? 3. And they've lost all the records in Hill Valley because there was a giant mud flood, and so all the paperwork was destroyed. So it comes up over and over again, which is interesting. There's also like the Toronto flood 1890 or whatever it is. I don't know.
Toronto got the flood. What the fuck?
Is that the one they built High Park for? Because I know they built it to like soak up all the water that comes in.
Yeah,
Canada. But Canada gets snow flooding basically. So the points where we get the most snow, if it was warmer, we would be flooding.
Yeah.
Well, there's also
freezing rain, which is even worse.
Well, there's also like
you've been in Toronto today.
There was a point in the 1800s. I don't know if I could find the picture of it, but it flooded, and there you go. You can see kind of what it looks like when it does flood. But they lost a lot of the records that were there before, and there's a bunch of people say at this point that maybe a lot of the history was changed in Canada to kind of hide what was going on with the natives or with the French and the natives because they've been working together, and It's interesting. Just there's no records before this because the entire building that has all the paperwork is destroyed, right? So we have these resets. We have no idea what happened to it.
I wonder, did they lose records on those train kids you were showing me last time too, or no?
Actually, so orphan trains, for the most part, you've got a lot of the census information. So you can.
That's
so
good.
the reason we know about orphan trains, basically, the reason we looked into it was because so many people when they were looking into Tartaria, couldn't trace their lineage back beyond a few generations, and they started realizing, they were orphans, their grandparents were orphans, or something like that. And so all of a sudden it started coming out, but people didn't talk about it, so it was definitely more secretive, and a lot of people don't know that they were, orphans that were picked up along these train lines.
Yeah, it's just crazy, man. All those kids, Lord of the Flies. Maybe that's why they have us reading that in high school, just in case.
For sure.
Yeah, get you ready on the
Not
island.
for nothing.
Yeah.
Well, do you think that The Lord of the Flies is the actual? I mean, because that's a weird movie and a weird book. The idea that that boys are savages, is that true? You think this is what would happen in nature?
Of
I mean, it
course.
happens in high schools.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, but that's because it's high school, isn't
form-
that? Because of the infrastructure of high school. You have sports, you got masonry, you've got all these.
No,
different
no,
things.
he's talking
Well, even
you're
if-
talking like halls and stuff, aren't you?
Look, even if you take out all those things, kids form cliques. They form popularity hierarchies based on physical attributes. It's part of being a child, and it's part of being a human, really. But we're deconditioned out of that. So I think humans are innately sort of savage in a way, and we have to be tamed. If you take a baby and you teach him nothing, he's going to become a savage human.
Yeah. Yeah, like, isn't it until they are 2 years old, they're all ego? Like they don't even have a concept of anything outside of their own self?
I think it's actually, you only start to have ego of yourself probably about a year or 18 months in, though. Like, so the first part of you kind of think everyone is part of, I think it's all super ego up until about 18 months, 16 months, 14 months.
Maybe.
Because super ego is the one that controls the ego and it's like, no,
Right.
that's evil. So it is just like, I'm hungry.
Yeah, well, the ego goes through stages.
No, I think that the baby,
anyone,
before it knows it's hungry, it knows that it's part of everyone else.
The origin of consciousness and the breakdown of the bicameral mind.
You're glitching out real hard. I didn't quite get what you said. The bicameral mind of what? Bicameral mind.
You might have an easier time if you turn off the video feed.
Yeah, you might want to turn off your video if you got low signal. Sorry, Kit's in Arkansas.
It's called the origin of consciousness.
Yeah, I almost feel what you're saying. It's more of
Yeah,
a
sorry.
Clockwork Orange type thing. Like
bicameral-
they're feeding you the.
Mind should be the first thing that comes up.
Sorry, go ahead, Kevin. What you said?
No, I'm saying it's more like the. I think it is more maybe Clockwork Orange. You know the story, so you're made to think that we're more savage than we actually are.
Totally.
that
I
we
think we're
can't
trained to
be.
be.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The thing is that
I think they want us to think we're primitive and we're all that stuff. So then we just think lower of ourselves rather than the other way. Think highly, and yeah, like even if you leave a kid alone, who knows? Maybe it'll obtain enlightenment on its own. I don't.
Oh yeah, sure,
think
that's
that's
possible. But the thing is that we have gangs, we have things that show up that if you go into certain parts of the world, those things exist even without being touched by our civilization.
And in my small town, I've seen like redneck raise their like feral kids where they just don't parent them. So I mean, like I maybe not to the extent, but yeah, there's definitely a thing.
Do you
There's
think
just-
that environmental
variability.
scarcity, maybe the environmental scarcity is creating these gangs, and they're trying to figure out how to get just enough for their group. And even then, isn't that kind of issue the idea that group mentality, collectivism, working together, even if you limit it, it's still kind of a fundamental part of your nature.
Well, yeah. Well, that's why we created religion. That was one of the big reasons for it, was that we were originally just tribes, right? You had your monkey sphere, 150 people, family tribes. And then it kind of evolved into city-states, so Romans could think of all Romans as the extended family. And religion was a way, was to expand it a larger group of people too. So now you have this abstract concept of Christianity and Christians. So when you meet another Christian, it's easier to accept them in your tribe as opposed to treating them like the other. And then nation states, and then that's the whole globalist thing, is they're trying to push it so it's like a global manifestation of the family unit, which obviously isn't going so hot depending on who you ask, but yeah.
I think it's a lot closer to like, have you ever seen videos of apex predators like lions who are playing very tenderly with like cats and dogs and like animals that are like 1/10 their size?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's only possible when everyone is well fed. The moment that that lion is hungry, that dog turns into meat.
I get it. What do they call that? Actually, there's a name for that. Luxury morality or something like that. Luxury beliefs. The idea that people can only be things like woke when it's times of plenty, but in times of hardship, people get conservative. I've heard a lot of stuff on this. That's interesting, though. Makes sense.
But then that,
Yeah,
of course,
but even at
means
the
that- go ahead.
sorry, even at the watering hole, you have all the animals gathering together to drink, whether they're hungry or not. They come together for the water, and everyone kind of knows.
Don't mess
Like,
with
we're
the
not
watering
gonna-
hole.
Yeah, we're not gonna fuck around here. We'll do it out there. But here we can come and yeah.
Well,
there's
that makes
really-
sense too, because during the droughts when the water's almost done, there's always like one crock in the middle, and nobody goes near then.
Yeah.
There's this
Nobody wants to
fantastic video of this one guy in Africa who drives this huge water truck into the desert and just fills up this watering hole, and all the animals are just waiting for them, and you see them like celebrating when he shows up. It's heartwarming.
I like that. But also, hang on, man. If even going back to that point of like we need a religion to not be savage, if there have been mud floods and this shit has been done, 20 times over, it almost seems like we have more. Yeah, even all the savage stuff might be more fiction than fact.
I mean, we're definitely programming people to believe how to behave. And so I think it's interesting when people talk about transsexuality or transgenderism, because you get a lot of kids that don't look like men or women when they're little. And then our idea of what a man is, a lot of that has to do with sports, muscles and training and this tribal ideology, which is, that's probably great and everything. But it is a social trained thing. In nature, you're going to gain muscles for other reasons. You're going to hunt for other reasons. You're going to compete for other reasons. So I don't think that we're learning how to function in schools in a way that's healthy. I mean, that's why people are saying they want to die, because hey, I'm not prepared to live in this world. So
You're not wrong. Like, clearly something's going wrong.
it's
What
scary.
was it? Didn't you know how it's like mental health has skyrocketed, and either it's expanding the Overton window of what's considered broken, or it's just more people are getting it. Or then there's that third theory that things are so safe now that the people who are prevalent for mental disorders would have likely died from war or some other reason. And so now, like, we're alive long enough to have them. It's like a fascinating thing when you really get into it.
You ever seen Does Your Soul Have a Cold? This is a really random documentary. I don't know why I remember it. I just saw it like years ago. But by following the lives of 5 Japanese individuals, this documentary explores the problem of depression in Japan, how the marketing of antidepressant drugs has changed the way the Japanese view depression. Because up until the 1990s, they didn't have a word for antidepressant. So they had to create a word. So they call it soul cold, basically. And yeah, I mean, and now Utsu, soul cold, and so now it's commonplace. Mental illness in Japan, they have all these people now that can't go outside, that can't be around other people, that are all, and so they consider themselves having soul cold. It's Utsu.
Well,
Oh
the
yeah,
funny
they've
thing
had
is-
that for a while now, haven't they? Where they've been like a suicidal country almost for a while.
Yeah, well,
It's
I mean, you used to
suicide
commit.
forest.
That's the other thing. People did
that's
used to
right,
kill
yeah.
themselves when there was no reason to live anymore.
The
That
funny
was
thing
normal.
about the
Oh,
term
did you?
cold in
Ryan had to
Japanese-
leave. Ryan, I'm sorry. I just saw your thing. You had a jet. I would have said to you, but yeah, he's gonna have to go. Guys, buy Praxology. Buy his book. I'll share it again. But keep going. Sorry.
I'm not sure I remember where I was going.
I mean, just like the idea that your soul has
Oh,
cold in the
yes.
Japanese suicide.
Yes,
yeah.
so the Japanese word for cold actually means evil wind.
Evil wind. Brutal.
Yeah, like if you have like a cold, it's you caught an evil wind.
Wow.
There's an aspect of Shintoism in there.
Yeah, being
because-
possessed.
Because they
even.
view everything as related to having a soul, so they have like the wind has a spirit, like everything has a spirit associated to it, including yourself, including your health and everything. So if your soul has a cold, well, it's because it's impacted by the spirit of something else.
That might be more logical than what we're saying usually. Like the idea that the World Health Organization thinks you're not healthy because you don't like want to work in a factory makes less sense to me than you're unhealthy because you breathed in bad consciousness. At this point, I'm actually more likely to believe that the evil wind got in me.
But I mean, it's all about the way that we define things, and the way that, like, you know, we say one thing is a virus or is a mental illness, but these words didn't exist before. The phenomena existed, but not the word for it. And so it's just a different way to think about different things. And whoever controls that definition gets to control perception of reality itself. For most people.
But harikari and seppuku were big parts of Japanese culture.
Yeah, they didn't fear death in the same way we do. They had systems of honor that made
if you lost your honor, if you couldn't live your life appropriately, that's when it made sense. So do the Canadians understand? I mean, I don't feel like the average I feel like we should make anyone who wants to do MAID watch that harikari movie from the 60s where the dude has to kill himself with bamboo, you know?
Because if it's the government's failure to treat people that's leading them to suicide, then wouldn't the government be the ones have to cut open their bellies?
That's what they're getting paid for. That's the sad thing is that they're making money, like probably as much money as it costs to birth a baby. You know, like probably like $600 to $1,800 at least per baby, right? That's probably 6,000 at this point. I don't even know what it is, but it's a lot of money per baby. That's how much they're going to get paid to kill people or to help people sustainably.
Well, you're not counting their organs because those are all worth a lot of money.
Oh, good point.
Sure.
Interesting. If they're healthy, though, right? And that's the other question, because a lot of the time, maybe they're not. But I don't know. Maybe they're still valuable, because you could be a cadaver for a trade show, right? Where they bring your body around to Dubai and they show you to a bunch of doctors in a room. You know, and then they bring you and they cut off part of your leg and then they show that to a bunch of students. Seriously, being a cadaver, like people, when they sign that piece of paper that says they can do whatever with your body, then they can sell
for cannibalism at that point. Like you could be selling to the highest.
I know, man.
No. Like aged meat.
I had to make sure I went and put that. I had to deregister myself. I did it when I first got my license. They get you when you're 16. And you're like, whatever. I had to actually go through all these chain of events to go, look, man, don't touch my body. If I die, leave me the fuck alone. You don't get anything. Fuck you.
Man, I mean, so with this book here that Kit you brought up is interesting looking. The Origin of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. It's talking about the ability to introspect, and the idea is the view must be distinguished from sensory awareness and other posterior cognition. So like we have all these levels that we think we're experiencing ourselves, reality, and each other on. He's talking about learning of consciousness, human mentality, calling it the bicameral mind, right? Kind of this verbal hallucination. We're taking in all this data and then we kind of create something we can work with that we're calling reality. And so that makes it so easy to control us, because then someone tells you as a little kid that this makes sense.
Can you guys hear me now with the camera?
Yeah, that sounds better. Yeah, go ahead.
Much better.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Awesome. I don't agree with. Oh,
I don't think it's working.
There's some parts of the theory that I don't really agree with. But I think the hidden advantage of this bicameral mind thing is that, you know, with the modern form of our consciousness, we can be aware of the problem and therefore have a better way to go about figuring out how to solve it. Does that make sense?
When you think bicameral, does that refer to the fact that it's like two hemispheres of mind that are creating a new reality, or what does that mean to you, bicameral?
In the modern day, I would consider it the division between the ego and the subconscious. Or you could even extend it to the division between ego, superego, subconscious, unconscious, etc.
Yeah, I mean, that's a question too, because it's bicameral instead of tricameral. Where does that leave the idiom, the id, you know? The idea that there's, like you said earlier, Simon, I'm hungry or something.
Yeah, the lizard brain. The I don't know.
What's Lord of the...
Yo, that's pretty deep, man. Shit.
The Lord of the Flies is really about idiom.
I think that's what
You're fading in and out like a signal from the bayou, buddy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, your thing's not working.
Yeah, you might want to try again next time. It's okay. But Kevin, what were you going to say about the Lord of the Flies? Or the id?
No, I was saying that's a deep the id. Yeah, the id trips me out, man.
Yeah, because we're so focused on the ego.
101 is right.
We think of the ego and the super ego, and the ego is like.
Say,
Yeah.
Sorry, Kit, your mic's really not working.
Yeah, you better just try next time. It's cool, bro. We'll do it next time. It was cool. I'm glad you showed up though, because like I definitely want to talk about the metaphysics and the bicameral mind. We'll just have to get like the microphone working, and also get you some stronger internet. It's no big deal. But I'm stoked on it. I mean, the more I think about how we are reducing our reality down into what we can expect to understand, you realize how little we're really pulling in. You know, we have all this data from our ears and eyes and sensorial information, but we just compress it into this little tiny YouTube video that we're experiencing. And that is our lives. Our lives are these little tiny memories that are just destroyed by like reality. Every time we reanalyze it, like that's not what happened at all, right?
Yeah, just the frame of mind you're in when you remember something will change the original memory. So that's why you can have people who like gradually hype them up or like hurt themselves mentally by revisiting things and like making themselves angrier and angrier or more and more depressed over it.
But then you've got this idea of the superego, which is telling you what you have to do, what was right for society, right? And how strong is that? Because that's the thing that's supposed to save society. These kids on this island are supposed to work together. And instead, they're going to basically eventually become cannibals by the end of it. Utilitarian.
Yeah, and that's the book they give to kids in school.
That's messed up.
You know what I mean? There's so many books written, and they're like, no, let's give them the one where the kids fucking try to eat each other and smash each other in the head with rocks. And, you know, you could give them different stories, too.
Utilitarianism. The best action is the one that leads to the greatest amount of happiness for the greatest number of people. Save the woman, kill the Joker. Save the woman makes sense. Should Batman kill the Joker? He doesn't kill. She's a good person, has 4 kids, neighbors love her, and she helps a lot of people. Kill the Joker. He's killed many people and will kill many more. He has no friends. He's hated. So it gets complicated because this is our metric that we've decided to use is utilitarianism, the greatest amount of happiness for the greatest number of people. That is the way you decide your action. So, I mean, is that right? What do you think about this?
No, even that's backwards, man. Even look, they taught us that the CEO of a megacorp is the good guy, and the guy that's just trying to give people a laugh, he's the bad guy. You know what I mean? They've already warped us with the Batman pitch anyways.
Dude.
I mean, this is the same thing as the maid conversation, though. Because, like, it's turning into a duty to die instead of just the right to die.
This is the best meme, right? He was trying to cool the planet. She was trying to regrow the forest. And they wanted us to root for the trust fund billionaire. It's friggin' real.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
They got us for it, man. Same thing with Iron Man. They're just like megacorp, big company.
Okay, that was actually a challenge, though, because he was supposed to write a character that you're supposed to hate him, but like him anyway. So
that is a challenge of the
Tony Stark.
Yeah, Tony Stark.
Yeah.
He's a super intelligent, alcoholic asshole, and you're supposed to like him anyway.
That's literally what propaganda is. So they effectively...
Yeah, that's what all the psychos are like that, though. All the psychos are...
Just look at Captain America, you know.
God, you know what? You want to see something horrible and relatable? Gutsy. Did you watch Gutsy with Hillary Clinton? I mean, seriously, did you? Because it is Guts. There's a show with Hillary and Chelsea where they go around all these different places, and they talk to clowns in France, and they talk to like people about marriage and love, which is the most painful episode to watch Hillary Clinton kind of tiptoe around her marriage while she's interviewing all these other people that are married and lesbians and everything. Pretty crazy. But the clown episode is good because Hillary Clinton learns how to be a clown. And I bring this up because, yeah, okay, it's painful to watch Hillary Clinton, but the way they did it was as unpainful as possible. Like they really got professionals to make this amazing propaganda picture that gets you to almost feel like, maybe not that you can relate to them, met them. Like that there are people that you've met that work at your school or church or something like that. And that you don't hate them. You put a soul on those faces.
She uses the same hot sauce as you.
Exact.
PR. It's all PR.
Yeah, it's propaganda. Public relations is what Bernays called it, right? Bernays, Edmund Bernays didn't want to call it propaganda because that's an Italian word, and he didn't speak Italian. So, but the public relations is the American term for propaganda, and we use it all. PR, good PR, good PR. But if you go to Europe, you'll still find on people's mailboxes the word propaganda, because that's where you put your information packets and news and your tabloids and whatever. But we think you guys know about Edmund Bernays, right? This guy was Freud's nephew. He did all kinds of stuff. He got people to love bananas. He's like, put bananas in your cereal so that we would enslave the Banana Republic. And he got a bunch of women to walk down the street, and he told them at the march, at the protest, to light your cigarettes at 11 o'clock in the morning. And all the newspapers, he called them and he's like, look, the Ladies of Liberty are going to be staging a protest tomorrow. And at 11 o'clock, the Ladies of Liberty will light their Liberty torches. And so all the newspapers are like, what the heck's going to happen? They go out there, they see these girls light some cigarettes, and all of a sudden they've got in their mind, they're looking for Ladies of Liberty, and they're looking for Liberty torches, and they light them. They light the cigarettes. So now they're all writing it on the newspapers because they get it. And it's this clever punchline. Ladies of Liberty light Liberty torches. And it's a free commercial. And not just a commercial, it's a convincing ad that gets women to think it's okay to smoke, because up until this point, it was unladylike. This is the kind of thing that America is built on, these like sensorial, primitive drives that you don't even realize. Like, he's not selling you a car, he's selling you safety in the middle of the night. He's selling you power and masculinity, whatever it is.
The opposite of what Ryan is doing with the advertising by trolling.
Well, I don't know, because the other thing is that you publish something in the newspaper that gets a bunch of people to react, get a bunch of people angry about it, and then they all demand something be done. So that's the thing. You trigger people. And it's weird that we use the word trigger so casually now, because trigger is such a Manchurian candidate term. To trigger someone is like to cause a hypnosis MK Ultra response where all of a sudden you release a trigger, right? It's even associated with pulling a trigger, like Lee Harvey Oswald or something like that. Mm-hmm. So it's weird because it's so part of our culture where we don't even think of it as weird at all.
Well, this is parts of systems of control, and they use everything from like the visual to the audio. Like, there's a reason that we have music so embedded in our civilization. It's because it's a powerful system of control that allows you to link things with certain music. So like, the fact that they play music in malls or in grocery stores, it's all part of this sort of Pavlov's bell sort of system of reaction and association that your brain does.
Also, smell. I was thinking about this a while ago, like mall smells, like, because smell is such an important smell. Like, look at this, 13 smells you'll never forget if you've been to a mall. So the idea of memorable smells, because smells are so associated with memory, that you could have the off chance that you're going to have a good time as a kid at the mall at one point, and then that memory is invoked every time you smell Auntie Anne's pretzels or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Or some weird chemical that's in the water, in the chlorine, Bed Bath and Body Works. These things they've been trying to get this back into Amazon for decades, right? They've got the Smellulator, like Simpsons smell USB powered thing. They want to give you odors so you can mix chemicals and get smells literally out of your computer, because it's so important to being able to control and invoke things you forgot 10 or 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. But it's all evil. Like, these are not food products. What is MSG? And MSG, what is MSG, right? MSG is like this weird salt that you can
monosodium, so single salt. Glutamine.
That is terrifying looking. Look at the shards of meth that we're looking at right now in that spoon. I don't know. I mean, it can make your tongue feel in places your tongue's never felt before.
I had a chef.
Again? Did you freeze? You froze in the coolest way. Kevin froze in this like kind of. I'm gonna even solo it for a second. Did you
I was
froze
told
like?
It opens your taste buds. Hang on.
Well, it's a cheap salt replacement apparently, but there's definitely a chemical problem.
Well, it's in basically everything savory that you like.
If you
like tomatoes or potatoes or any of that stuff. You like meat or mushrooms, there's monosodium glutamate.
Well, we have it in buffets because apparently, according to the chefs, it cuts appetite. So they cram it full in buffets. So you're eating something and feeling full from it, even if you're not actually full yet, so that you're going to eat less.
Yeah, the way I had a chef friend explain it to me, it opens up your taste buds. Like it expands your taste buds so you can make bland food taste better, easier. So then you can kind of like make a meal. It's like a cooking hack.
It's the equivalent of savory sugar for your taste buds.
Yeah.
It activates it as strongly as you can.
Like the salty equivalent, I guess.
Well,
Yeah,
so
basically.
nothing. So basically,
Well-
if there ever was anything that could touch that part of your tongue, right? It wasn't there
I don't-
anymore,
I don't
right?
think
So
it's
sour,
real.
sour, bitter, salty, sweet. So you
So
don't
this
think
is
it's true?
actually not true. No,
Yes.
it's
Oh.
spread out all across the tongue. Every area has salty,
Receptors.
sweet, and yeah.
Okay, but there is a specific sodium and glutamate receptor or something
Yes.
to that effect. So that's the thing. There's no food that produces this naturally, and so, or at least that we know of. Everything else.
Oh,
has been
no,
killed
there's
that would have.
Tons of them. So basically anything savory. So like I said, tomatoes, potatoes, meat, mushrooms, anything that's slightly savory is going to have some MSG in it naturally, though we're obviously not in the amounts that you're getting from like processed foods.
Man. So then but does it make it, I mean, because it seems like it's safe because a lot of people in Japan are still 90 years old when they die, and they've obviously had MSG all their lives at this point. So is MSG as bad as we think it is?
Well, it's basically just extracted from seaweed broth in Japan. Like it's, I believe that's the way that they originally figured it out.
All right, then I'm not against it. That seems pretty cool. I'll eat some more MSG then. That's fine.
Just moderation, that's all.
What about
Or just have sea vegetables. Like dulse is really good.
What about DeMar Hamlin? So he's awake now. You guys remember this? He was
Heart
playing
attack?
football and he had a cardiac arrhythmia, we're supposed to say.
Yeah, that is not a fun experience to have.
We're not
I'm
supposed to
glad
say
he's
what it is.
At least still alive, because that's
Oh my God,
that
yeah.
looked bad.
Is he
How
gonna?
many vaccines did he take?
He's clearly, to be playing sports, he had to be vaccinated. I'm not saying that had anything to do with it. I'm just saying to play sports, he had to have been. I'm curious if he's going to say anything. Do you think he's going to have any, because he's just a football player. He's not a doctor. He might be on the internet. He might have some thoughts about this and be like, hey, man, all I know is I was fine. I don't know. Is he going to say something or has
Is
he
he
got
gonna
too
be
much
able
money
to-
in this?
Maybe.
He's going to be able to afford health, care after if he speaks about it, because he could be in the same situation as what's his
Right.
face, the singer from Canada. He was a meme. Everybody hated him for a while.
Oh, Nickelback?
Justin Bieber?
Bieber.
Oh, Bieber.
He can't talk about his situation. So
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he had the.
Bell's palsy.
yeah, so he can't do anything anymore. And like
Is that-
I'm not a fan by any stretch, but I
Is,
still
he,
feel
is his
bad for him.
face literally not back?
I don't know about
Apparently
that,
it's gotten better.
but like performing, like he probably doesn't have that many
Oh.
spoons.
That was in December, so just 19 days ago. He still has face paralysis?
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so and apparently his girlfriend also got it rough. So like, I feel for him,
Yeah, it's nuts. I actually know somebody that Bell's palsy happened to recently, and they were not vaccinated, luckily. So hopefully it's not something. But apparently this can happen to people, like to completely lose all the muscle movement in the side of your face. It's supposed to go away, though. It's supposed to be like 6 weeks to 6 months, like 99% of people, 93 to 99% of people recover from. But I mean, how long ago did this happen? This was like in June, right?
Oh, this was pretty early, yeah. So I don't know. Hopefully he gets better, but yeah, it's kind of worrying.
Dude, it's crazy. I don't know. So I mean, so many of these things are happening. Like, what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed
Did
to
you
like
hear
tell
about
people?
Did you hear about the other footballer? When did he pass away? There was another guy,
Pele?
Uche.
Pele just passed.
No, this other guy here. This was, I guess, 2 days ago. Another 38-year-old. Those wacky footballers with their wacky heart conditions.
Yeah, did you send it in the
There.
Uche Nwaneri, former Jaguars offensive lineman, dead at 38. Wow.
I'm
I
surprised
mean, yeah,
it
what's
hasn't
even-
happened in Canada with like the hockey players yet.
Well, I saw someone saying that there's a bunch of people that aren't even getting reported because a lot of the stats are just coming from like hospital stats.
Wife found him unresponsive in a bedroom of her house at around 1 a.m. Called for help. Dang. Yeah, so this is just happening all over the place.
Yeah, so that footballer that recently passed, he had this thing where here there was this. Let's see if this works. He even had this tweet like a year ago, just shitting on the league if they were against any of this stuff.
So let's get these vaccine mandates and vaccine passports up and running ASAP. We've seen children die daily from the unvaccinated selfishness. Pregnant women at risk too. Protect life. Mandate the vaccine. Jail anyone who refuses to protect life. So I would guess it's pretty likely he was vaccinated. Okay. Man. And again, that doesn't mean anything.
Well, it means nothing. It's just purely coincidental, right? It's
right.
Just
exactly.
Solely,
and will continue to be considered as such until a later date.
This is gonna take 15 years before then you start seeing the class action lawsuit commercials, and it'll just be playing in between Judge Judy reruns. We're not gonna have the conversation about it.
I mean, the thing is, eventually, if it comes, and I've been thinking about this, it's going to be so expensive because you're going to have to retire all of these kids who are like 23. You know, you're going to have to retire all of them for their lives because if this is the case, if that turns out to be
Canada or California.
Well, right, their lives could be brief in Canada. That's bittersweet.
Hey, at least you already have that right in place just in case.
That's so scary. But, if that happens, the cost of replacing an entire new generation of athletes that haven't been Pfizered or whatever it is, if that were the case. I keep trying.
Maybe they're just getting ready for the robot athletes. They're just going to do all AI sports.
That's in the Jetsons, right? Yeah. Robot football. Do you think that would be enough for people? Because the thing about sports is, people like to watch people get hurt. People like to imagine themselves being the person. I could do that. If I spent my life not working and supporting a family and I was still 35, I could do that or whatever it is.
If it's directly controlled by people, we already have robot battle sort of shows that have been around for 20 plus years.
I mean, there's not that much difference between that and a lot of esports either. It's just adding a physical dimension to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess at this point there are a lot of people.
But maybe we'll have gamer
too.
Like the gamer, I think it was called.
Yeah, the one where they're criminals who get possessed by people who play the game using their bodies. Yeah.
So they remote control prisoners who are on death row, and that's how they kill people on death row. And it's gamers using VR.
Oh, that was a classic too with Arnold. What was that called?
No, it was
the Running Man.
Running Man.
Running Man. Yeah.
Yeah, that is basically the movie equivalent of Smash TV.
Dude, Running Man is a really important movie. Do you guys remember all the bits of that? Isn't it? It's a fake news world where he catches them killing a bunch of kids, so they make it look like he killed a bunch of kids, and then some lady finds out, and then they make it look like she's a terrorist on the news, and so the whole news system is fake news, right? That was crazy.
Yeah, he refused to gun down this child village, but they just cut up and edited it perfectly to make him look like he did it.
And then they had to chase him down.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think that that's basically how a lot of this stuff goes? We get these, how easily Amber Alerts and everything could be weaponized. They could track, our whole society thinks they're helping each other, track someone down because they're, they have a star on their arm or something.
Yeah, I've thought that for a while, man, even with how fake all the media is. Just when they tell you someone's a wanted criminal, you really got to go come on, what did they do really? Is this just some smear campaign to get people on a manhunt? What's happening? Because that's what that was too in Running Man. It was just nobody gave a shit. Everyone was just watching, glued to the TV.
Well, because you're not supposed to actually win the game, right? And that's kind of what triggers the whole thing, is that he's actually winning and beating all the bosses throughout the thing.
You guys remember the Aurora, Colorado shooting? The Batman movie, right? And so and there's this James Holmes kid, right? And I'd met James Holmes once. And you can see him on YouTube if you type in James Holmes action script. I think you can see his presentation. How far down do I have to go? Lecture. Are they gonna hide it? Really? Lecture. There you go. A science presentation by James Holmes in 2006. Talking about the temporal order of judgment reversal, gradual delays, remove delays, time illusion, affecting action, philosophical mentors work, grapheme perception. Basically, the most solid. You know what? Hold on. You gotta actually, like, you won't even believe me. You won't even believe me unless you like get to hear him talk. So, one sec.
In the layers, there are frames, and text, images, and code can be placed in the frames to make the movie do things. And my main task was to write code. I was writing code to show how our perception of causality can be tricked. And a major way humans learn is through action and effect relationships. And to simulate this on a computer, we have a key press as an action, and effect is the appearance of an image. And actions and effects have logical progressions through time. That is, effects proceed or seem simultaneous with the.
I mean, basically, my point being is if you played this video, you would not think he was insane. You know what I mean? Like, he's not crazy. He actually knows what temporal space, causality, what choices lead to, etc. And so you can see, like, there's this kid who all of a sudden he's gone from looking pretty normal to. Let me go back to James. The videos of him, very MK Ultra, right? This is the guy that we remember from the photos, and he's totally insane and bonkers. And when you look into the military psychiatrist that he had, and his dad's IMF connections, and all of the other school shooting connections, you know, with the Santa Barbara college shooter, you know, they were all IMF, sons of the IMF parents, right? All around the time, there were tons of IMF and banking suicides around the world as well. And then at the Aurora shooting, the amount of people that died, it was crazy, right? But there was also the people who died. This guy worked at the local army base. This guy worked at the local army base. Two of the women involved did as well. And they were all in. The guy was involved with the release of the WikiLeaks footage to, you know, of the Iraq war, the spraying. What's the name of the transgendered army soldier? Chelsea. Manning. Yeah. Chelsea Manning. So Chelsea Manning had left that army base with a Metallica labeled disc that was actually a DVD with tons of data. And the person who was supposed to stop this from happening later dies in the Aurora shooting with a bunch of people. So it's not that crazy of a thing. Right after this kid wakes up in a car, right, with all kinds of gas masks, machine guns, things you can't get. You know what I mean? And he's just sitting in, and he's locked in his car, and he's asleep, and he wakes up because he's been passed out, right? So every direction of this story is crazy. It could easily be that they just placed him there. It could easily be that they triggered something. It could easily be that he was watching YouTube videos that radicalized him. I don't know. But it's just, it seems so insane when you know the context of how rational this kid was, and that he would have gone to Colorado to do this, and that he would have had the resources and everything else. It's just, and then that it would be so beneficial to the people fighting against Julian Assange. I mean, it's just, there's just too many questions left to answer.
That's a lot to digest.
Well,
yeah, man. I don't know. Do you guys have thoughts on this? What do you think about things like this? I mean, I'm not telling you to go down the Sandy Hook road, but like.
Well, this one's super funny too, because it was like, look at the layout too. It's a dude that walks into a Batman film, literally looking like the Joker. You know, it's like they really made him all loony. It almost seems like a weird, almost another angle to like weird PR marketing.
Right, the Joker hair.
Just like a, yeah, like it's so bizarre, man. And he walks into a Batman flick, and then that was like the whole, you know, it's just, yeah, he definitely seems Manchurian.
The propaganda around the Joker film was basically entirely about this event as well.
Right. And this
That's
movie was
right,
about
yeah.
the Bane movie. And the Bane movie, you know, Trump later quoted his speech, right? Bane Trump speech. Do you know what I'm talking about? So at this movie, Bane has a speech. We're not merely transferring power from one administration to another or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people, right? And we give it back to you, the people. So, I mean, and this kept going on, like, the people get the rewards, the government have been kept you down with music and myths. It's amazing when you read it, and he's like, yeah, it's weird. I guess somebody who was working on the speech must have watched the Batman movie. I don't know. And they just kind of let it go. But that was his inauguration.
Well, that's a funny
speech.
one, even because that's what's his name? That's Nolan. And Nolan always ends up dropping weird stuff in his movies. You had Tenet about rich people having a time machine. That Batman, the Bane one, was about that. What's his name? Bruce Wayne fakes his death at the end. He has to pretend he died in the bomb. Remember?
Right. Yeah, that plane crash that looks like JFK Jr. Right when he's supposed to have survived. Right.
Yeah. That's funny.
I mean, that is like the QAnon conspiracy. The plane crash was crazy. And the story goes literally something like it looks like they literally filmed what they believe happened to if JFK Jr. had planned all this, knew that Hillary Clinton was going to become senator, that he was not going to win New York City, and that he knew that they were going to kill his family. If all of these ground rules for the story are the case, then that is the plot of that plane crash, where they come into the plane, they blow up the plane, they take him out of the plane, they have to get into another vehicle, parachute out, and they continue on. It's shot perfectly. It must have been so expensive. I mean, it's insane, right?
Yeah, Nolan almost seems like he's our generation's Kubrick. Like he's gonna drop something where they're gonna wipe him out for it. Seems like he's gonna do an Eyes Wide Shut eventually.
You sent me this picture from Electroma, the Daft Punk movie.
Oh,
no,
that's
is
just
it from
machines
Electroma?
taking over. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and this movie, they have to paint their faces to look human. The robots, they wear these.
They go to a factory. They go to a factory to get faces like injected or molded onto them.
To look like humans so they can pass in society, right? But eventually they're like, it's not going to work. I can't do it anymore. And they're going to, and so they go out to the desert and he lights himself on fire,
Yeah,
I always wondered about Daft Punk.
movie, man.
I feel like they're trying to say something pretty important with this movie too, about themselves and about the music scene. And they're like, you can kind of pretend to be part of it for a while, but you don't want to succeed at pretending to be part of the human race for too long.
That's pretty. Yeah, they did a good job, man. They kept their faces covered. They did their time, and then now they pieced out.
Yeah, they live in Beverly Hills with their 15-year-old kids. They're grown-ups, Isn't bad. But Bane does kind of represent to me this idea of, the anti-Batman and kind of the good guy. And they kind of put that out in Nolan's representation. Because Batman is this McCain supporting conservative, right, with all this money. And then Bane is kind of, he's kind of an anarcho-Marxist who's saying that we're going to build the infrastructure out horizontally. And so it is interesting. Like, again, we're showing this character that's supposed to be this bad guy, but he's really been raised by the people for the people,
Well, he's been raised by an organization of assassins, no?
That's Lord of the Flies. That's a humanity.
Ra's al Ghul. But this is the original Bane.
But then, so again, we're saying Bane and Lord of the Flies is like this kind of inherent nature, but it isn't. If that's the case, then he's in a prison. He could have been raised in a library. What would Bane have been like if he was raised anywhere else? I don't know. If he was rich, is that the answer? That he had to be rich like Bruce Wayne in order to be a better person?
The thing is that, look, if you have Batman has another billionaire in the same universe, Lex Luthor, who is basically, he's the antithesis of Batman in terms of like what a good millionaire is versus a billionaire versus
even Lex Luthor is actually the good character in Red Sun.
Yeah, well, that's when communism takes over. That's when Stalin weaponizes Superman against the world. So
I mean, yeah, and then Superman essentially becomes Stalin himself. Yeah.
The whole thing about Lex Luthor is that he's against, like, he wants humans to be the greatest thing in the universe. He wants to be the representative of the human Ubermensch, while Superman is the actual, he is the Ubermensch that we imagined, and so he's that struggle between, like, okay, well, I'm going to surpass God. Like, it's what happens when a guy becomes a billionaire and wants to surpass a god.
What's this rad Canadian looking movie, Necrotronic?
So, this is basically demons being spread through the internet and through technology, and influence. There's an app that basically makes you get possessed by a demon.
Wow.
And I mean, look, I've seen plenty of apps that feel like they're possessing people, like they're.
We talked a little bit about this the other day, the iDosing. Kids these days are using binaural beats in order to kind of feel drugs, because there are drugs that make your equilibrium feel different, or there's different tones that you can play that'll if you play it in one ear differently, the other, it'll bring you towards that equilibrium. So I mean, this is interesting to me for a couple reasons. One is because kids think it's safe, which usually means it's not. And even beyond the demon aspect, the idea of acclimating, right? Like developing a tolerance, but for real, where your body is now acclimated, so you constantly feel that way, or you feel kind of uncomfortable unless you're listening to that frequency and tone. I can imagine people kind of becoming addicted, and maybe physically, this is also into that idea of Rife talking, that you could hurt yourself, right? Because we might be taking frequencies that we're listening to, and we're trying to submit to them rather than push out our own frequencies. And that might actually be causing cancers or health problems.
Well, for eons, humans made their own music. Like, everyone basically had some form of musical creation that they would have, whether it be a hum or a form of playing an instrument or just singing or anything. Humans, they had to entertain each other. They didn't have televisions. They didn't have like radios, so they had to actually be the ones to bring in this sort of culture and create it and auto-generate it. And it was a tool for auto-regulating your own neurochemistry, and those around you. But now it's been turned into a system of control where it's like you have music and then ads, music, ads, music, ads, ads and music. And it's just constantly bombarding you with external, ultra-processed versions of music. And it's best to find a way to not let yourself be too influenced. I remember that when I was in my 20s, there was a thing about a binaural drug that was like the gates of Hades or something, and if you listen to it long enough, you would eventually see the gates of hell. And I've never done it because even back then I wasn't that stupid, But I've seen people do it. And not fun, apparently.
Folsom Theater.
I think you might be muted, Andreas.
Yes, Andreas, you're muted.
Sorry, I was like, who was the guy who owned the Folsom Theater? Graham, and he got killed in the helicopter accident. And he owned all of the billboards. It's not Billy Graham. It's like Graham. I forget. But basically what happened was Clear Channel was going to try to buy all of his billboards. And then before this, he owned a bunch of theaters. He owned a bunch of billboards. He owned a bunch of. He'd bought the rights to the sides of barns across the United States. They used to paint their barns with a billboard, and so Clear Channel wanted to buy all that. And Clear Channel owns all the billboards in the United States now, so you can see what happened. He said no. He dies in a helicopter crash. Clear Channel owns all of his stuff now, and not just that, but a bunch of radio stations. And that's when radio stations started to synchronize all their commercial times. And you have the digital jockeys that are just playing songs that are on automatic, so there's no human interaction. The DJs are becoming more and more technicians and less important to that particular station, right? And so that's also, I wonder about Buddy Holly, the day the music died, right? Because there's a lot of conspiracy theories about Buddy Holly, and that he knew a little too much about what was going on with the music industry that was trying to say, hey, we could own all this stuff. First thing they did was they got rid of all the orchestras because they wanted to get paid to play their music on the radio. And they got a bunch of black kids and they're like, hey, we'll get your music famous without paying them properly. And then they started having a system where they're like, we can play your music for free, as much as we want. and that destroyed a lot of the big bands, a lot of the kinds of music that used to have multiple musicians, because you'd have to pay each musician. If you have 12 people in a swing band, then we get down to 3 or 4 people, and they're trained, but then they're owned, right? And he saw this, and then they crashed the plane, right? There's the whole thing with the crickets. But
then there was that the TLC chick, what was her name? Left Eye Lopez, Lisa Lopez.
Right, TLC.
She was getting big on talking against like that Dr. Sebi stuff. She was on the Dr. Sebi tip, and then she got taken down in a plane crash randomly.
Or a car crash. I forget if it was a plane, but yeah.
Oh yeah, it might have been a car crash on the islands or something. But
it was right when
the girls
wanted to talk about it. None of the girls were like ever able to, and they just could never keep a straight face or look at the camera, and they're all real quiet about it. Like, yep, she was trouble, man. She was trouble. She was getting to be real trouble. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, it seems like they catch every star like that, man.
But she must have known from the beginning. They probably were like, because she's got a left eye condom. I mean, there's definitely some Eye of Horus sexuality. I mean, remember Osiris's dick being the whole thing, because he's pulling them into pieces, and the only part they don't get back is his phallus. And there's this idea of you have to sacrifice people in order to become famous, or to ensure your place, right? So there's always that question there.
Yeah. And then what they just did it with that whole Tory Lanez thing. There's a whole conspiracy about it now, man. Another Canadian. He got hit with that. He was shooting Meg the Stallion. But apparently he just recently, like, he cracked the music industry code where you don't need the music industry to get paid. Like he figured out some way to do it where, like, there was a video of it of him explaining what he did and stuff. And then it was like right after that, that's when he started getting into all this weird legal trouble.
Interesting. Cracked the code. Well, that's like the other thing I was looking at recently. What's his name? Mr. Beast, right? Because James, like he, it's such a weird name. Like he seems like such a cool guy. Don't get me wrong. Like he seems to help everybody he meets. So I can't say anything bad about him. I wouldn't. But at the end of the day, how crazy is it that your name is Mr. Beast? Like that is Aleister Crowley's nickname, and that you're the most important person on the internet. It seems to me it's like the idea that he figured out and cracked the algorithm. I guess that's completely believable. But it's insane, right? Because he cracked the algorithm. But then again, he did do things every step of the way to do that. Like he'd get people to generate comments. He'd give people money so more people would tune in. He figured out ways of doing it. But I mean, that recently Google tried to buy him, right? And they offered him like, what was it? Some crazy amount of money, like $100 billion or something like that. And he turned it down. Or was it 1.2 billion? It was just a lot of money. And he turned it down. But that makes me wonder, like, maybe he is an evil because he's not owned by Google? Or what do you think?
Well, he might own Google instead one day.
I mean, yeah, Google can't last as itself forever. The money that was in Venrock that became Google, it's going to have to move on to other places. That's how parasites work, right? They suck the life out of things.
Well, it's hard to know. Like, he's hard to read, right? Mr. Beast is like, he's one of those that, like, too good to be true kind of characters where you're like, there's something about you.
You ever read the Nikopol trilogy?
No.
French comic book by Enki Bilal. Really interesting comic book. And it's about our world where the Egyptian gods come back, and all of a sudden these giant freaking pyramids or alien ships or whatever with their pyramids are floating over us. And Horus and Osiris and Thoth and Anubis, they're all there. And they're these immortal aliens, basically, that they seem immortal because they live for like tens of thousands of years compared to us or something. So it seems like a long time. But they come and they basically get this guy, or I think it's Osiris, or is it Horus gets this guy and he cuts off his leg. And then he puts his own metal godlike leg on him. So all of a sudden he's like weighted to the ground. Like it's so heavy he has to lie down. He can't even lift it. But then he puts this spirit of Horus in him. And so now he can run and he can fly and he's got all this energy, but he can only do what Horus wants him to do. Otherwise, this powerful leg becomes an anchor, right? So it's like he's traded for that. And what Horus wants him to do is find this new transhumanist blue-haired girl that the human race has invented and make love to her so that he can have his alien seed be part of the new race that he thinks is going to like replace humanity.
Well, it's
And-
very French anyway.
It is very
some Mobius vibes in there.
Yeah, they made a good movie out of it actually. Before Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow.
Yeah, I think I've seen this. I've seen the video of this, like what you're talking about. I've seen it in a clip with I Pet Goat at some point. Someone made a combination with those.
It's a really interesting story though, because it speaks a lot to, you know, what are humans doing? What are humans going to become? At this point, they're augmenting themselves more and more, and they're losing themselves in the process, right? Because you're like, I want to be so smart and so powerful, but in the process, you lose big parts of what make you unique and quirky and yourself, right? And your personality starts to disappear. And so, you know, the human race is clearly coming to some sort of an issue where it doesn't believe in itself enough. And it's willing to trade itself to become something else. And then meanwhile, this new thing is emerging, which is, you know, the AI is longing to be more human, right? So all those qualities, like it's really focusing on those things. And so I don't know. Yeah, go ahead.
Have you read Transmetropolitan?
Transmetropolitan. I don't think so.
So this one, the main character is essentially Hunter S. Thompson.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has a lot of notes on transhumanism where people kind of lose themselves. Definitely recommend to anyone in the audience who has not heard of it before.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it does feel like, you know, superhero comic books are the thing that's going to tell us the most about human evolution that's coming and the way it's going to be looked at socially. And you've got heroes and villains because when people are above the law, and that's for one reason or another, whether because they're superhuman or because the system itself degenerates, right? And so you have more and more corruption, then clever characters emerge. And whether they're good or bad, you know, that isn't necessarily cast in stone that they're going to be evil or good. I mean, it's not just this Lord of the Flies thing.
Well, we're going to have like an X-Men kind of scenario. We're going to have like the transhumanists are going to be ostracized compared to the regular humans.
I think we will for a while, but also I think corporations, you know, are going to play a big role in empowering certain kinds of people that work for them better. And if they think that a transhumanist is more valuable to the corporation, then that will eventually become part of the propaganda and public relations campaigns, and people will start to believe that they should be if they want to have a job. Or also,
what group do you think the transhumanists would support? If the transhumanists had to support any one particular group, I wonder who the transhumanists would support.
Ironically, so it's different in different places, right? So if you look at like the Technocratic Party, New Zealand, there's a lot of libertarians that want the right to be technocratic, and there's, if you look at the Singularity movement, there's the United States Transhumanist Party. A lot of people in the United States Transhumanist Party are in Maryland, and a lot of them are associated with conservatives. There are Republicans that are transhumanists. There are Trump supporters that were part of the Transhumanist Party that want to make sure that certain transhumanist issues are respected. Not all of transhumanism wants to change humanity out of humanism. A lot of there's transhumanism, posthumanism. Transhumanism really just wants to make sure that Alzheimer's and aging end. That it's not necessarily that you live forever, even. It's just that you eventually stop having suffering. If you can give a kid an arm because they've lost an arm, then that's transhumanist enough to be part of the United States Transhumanist Party. So it's not a gender thing. It's not a liberal thing. It's not a Marxist thing. And there's a lot of them that are pretty anti-Marxist, actually.
There are already problems with some implants, though. Like there's an implant for people who have retinitis pigmentosa, which is a degenerative eye problem that makes you go blind. And so they insert a little photoreceptor in the eye, and then you have basically a wireless pair of glasses that transmit it into your eye as a little camera. And problem is that the company is no longer supporting the ones that have already been implanted. So
that's a big scare for a lot of the transhumanists is that technology might go out of date from corporations. So the state has to demand that bioimplants be open source so that they can be updated. Like what if you have the people with the first generation Neuralink, Like, imagine how sucky that would be, because you wouldn't be able to update it in certain
For
ways.
sure.
It's actually a theme in the first Mass Effect game. One of the human characters you can get who uses whatever mind powers. He has an older version of the implants that the main character has, and so they get constant migraines. So, you know, like even in fiction, we already have this covered.
It's interesting because I think a big thing that transhumanists are really like, they're all different. The only thing that really unites them is the hate of aging. Like, they're against aging. They don't like the idea that people don't appreciate how crazy it is that everyone faces aging like it's nothing, like it's a disease that just is ignored. People hide. People don't even, when people get old, they don't let them outside anymore, it seems like, so that people don't even interact with each other. People are scared to death.
No doubt. Well, there's a variation on transhumanism that I've been thinking about for a long time. It's side transhumanism, so it's the notion that you can use psychedelic technology as a transhumanist tool. And I know that a lot of transhumanists use like psychedelics, of course, but it has to be incorporated into the mix, or else I think that we lose that connection with nature that makes it very, very important. And so the goal would be to balance ourselves with nature and to emulate nature using technology, like creating biotech based on nature, and then finding that harmony with it instead of just whole domination with machine, you know?
Wouldn't it be funny, though, all the people who are uploaded who end up having to use artificial versions of these psychedelics just so that they can be more human?
Right. It's going to be like
Yeah.
eye-dosing drug addicts. But, you know,
just one note, though. The best comic book you can read on the topic is Ancestor by Malachi Ward. Like, as far as transhumanist comic books, this is the top-notch, like, the best of the best. To me, anyways.
I'll have to get it. I'll check it out. Well, so the thing is, people don't. I've talked to a number of transhumanists actually about the Tibetan Book of the Dead and the idea that people used to prepare for death all their life. You'd live your life kind of like a bucket list, and people are laughing like there was no term for bucket list before the movie Bucket List. I'm pretty sure people had some paradoxical understanding of samsara that led them to have, you know, destinial obligations to fulfill before they die, right? And this is something that we've lost. People are living for today, which is good to an extent. I don't think everyone's living for today either, but people aren't thinking about the future, what they're leaving behind. Not really. There's no effort put into that. The people aren't just running around planting trees so that after they're dead there's a forest. You know, I think that that's something missing from humanity that used to be part of us more.
I agree.
Well,
Short-term
ironically,
profit, short-term gain.
Mr. Beast had a big thing where he was planting trees.
Right. Mr. Beast does some cool stuff. Don't get me wrong.
So I don't know. There's another sync there.
But a lot of the transhumanists I talked to are against that. So those, not the tree planting, they love that, but the idea of death and preparing for death and understanding the importance of death. They're like, well, you know, you could replace that with something else equally as or more important. You don't need death. And so I think that's a big question is like, do we need to die? Do you think that's important? I mean, is it really, or have we just learned to appreciate it?
You know,
I think death and birth are both inherently, you know, they're not just combined, they're interdependent. It's like yin and yang. We can't have the process of creation or birth without the process of death. And that's where, like, I think there's probably some media or some stories that relate to this to a certain degree. But if we removed the process of death, we would create such a distorted reality that it would be beyond our worst comprehensions what the outcome would actually be of that. It would be its own form of prison, you know, like how for the longest time, the only way to get a DMT experience was to die, you know, it's like that's how I think a lot of it comes back to our discussion earlier on id, ego, superego. I think at the heart of that, we secretly our ego wants to eventually dissolve. You know, that part of our drive as humans is to attempt to become literally everything. And I think that is a great way to kind of give a metaphor over to what a Buddhist doctrine is trying to portray. We want to become everything, and we can't become everything if we don't die at some point eventually. So I don't know. That sounds like crazy to not
No,
want to die or face it. It sounds crazy. It's out there,
It's,
you know.
it's interesting. Like, so the Mayans don't have a word for death. They have world bridging. They don't have a word for birth. They have world bridging. World bridging is so, to reiterate your concept that they're intrinsically tied. I think a lot of people agree with you and would have agreed with you for thousands of years. It's not that crazy. Kit sent a message, the guy who's in our chat from Arkansas, and I'll read it for him. I'm sorry, because next time we'll have you again. Transhumanism 1. Transhumanism 1. Use extensive holography techniques to record a full hologram of the human body, requiring probably a lot of different, very specific frequencies to record onto the holographic medium. 2. Build a full-service quantum computer capable of entangling particles in a given set arbitrarily. 3. Set wire metaverse settings to swap entanglement in order to seamlessly transfer your consciousness to the metaverse and keeping your real body in a sense. Right. This is the idea that you don't have to die in order to do that. And he supports the idea of distorting reality. And I think that's another thing to consider is like our ideas of reality. It's like maybe we're just these angry old men at this point, and we're like, when I was your age, the snow uphill both ways, we had radio, and we had love and everything. I don't know. Maybe we're romanticizing, because I did talk to Alexander Dugin about this and how he was romanticizing the Soviet Union, the same thing he protested against as a kid. Are we romanticizing the reality that we're trapped in?
I think that's just human nature to try to romanticize whatever happens. But we have more than that to actually experience. And when we allow ourselves to be part of nature or part of the greater thing, then we stop focusing on being distorted. Like, I think that when we're experiencing reality as we are, what we don't need is to distort it or to create like sub realities. What we should be doing is trying to see reality for what it truly is, and that means mind expansion as well as psychedelic experiences and just undoing our own bullshit. Because if we don't deal with that first, then we're just going to distort reality further into our delusions and create subdimensions further into our own, say, escapism, as opposed to actually dealing with our shit and seeing reality for what it truly is, which is, I don't know, a miracle or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. What do we have to do to provide people with an alternative to MAID? Like, what are the actual steps towards having, something in life that's worth holding on to as long as you can?
I mean, that's probably a really good idea for psychedelic research again, but you'd probably end up in a loop of the 50s, 60s, where that's what they were kind of doing. They did it in Saskatchewan. In Saskatchewan, they did a lot of LSD testing. It was a couple doctors. They were giving it to patients, and then they would take it themselves, and then they would share the experience with the patient. And it seems like, it's probably due for a revamp.
What's interesting about that is, so MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies out of Santa Cruz, California, is funded and financed, at least it was, I don't know if they stopped, by George Soros in like large part. So, I mean,
that's interesting.
I don't know what it means though, right? Because like his son Alex is interesting too. What do we know interesting means? It might not be that what do we think about Soros and everything that we're being taught? I have to question everything all the time. Granted, I don't know if MDMA is the one anyway. I've always been suspicious because there's so many other things that would probably be a better deal for the mind than some sort of a stimulant. But
yeah, psychedelic would probably be a lot more better. Something along the lines of mushrooms or LSD will give you that same euphoric feeling of MDMA, but MDMA does make you feel pretty good.
Yeah, it'd be ideal if it was like a tryptamine, like some sort of something that was, they don't do this, and that's kind of the thing that's kind of crazy.
Kudos to
like turkey turkey's got tryptamine.
Yeah, it's tryptophan that produces tryptamine in your system. Alpha-methyltryptamine was called Indipan and was briefly marketed as an antidepressant in Russia, right? And so the thing about it, you have to imagine the Soviet Union, the pharmaceutical companies weren't trying to make money the same way that American pharmaceutical companies were. And so there were some really impressive medical, alternatives. And people don't realize electroshock therapy was banned in the Soviet Union. That was something they thought of as Western and barbaric. And so they were really working on a lot of these things that were designed to be like a one-time psychiatric substance that you'd take with a therapy. and the therapy this is exactly what MAPS is talking about now, helping someone process post-traumatic stress while they have chemicals in their system that make it possible, because it's so traumatic that unless you have the dopamine to make it possible that wouldn't naturally be there, you should freak out, right?
Well,
And when you're talking about soldiers.
That goes back to the state of mind that you're in when you access a memory changes how you store that memory back, because you're not like remembering a copy of it, you're like taking the original memory. So like, yeah, if you're high on something, then that's going to change how you store the memory after. And
Dude, Lana Del Rey scares the crap out of me. That girl is terrifying.
Yeah, she might be a robot, man. She's a Daft Punk byproduct.
She just feels like, I'm sure she has feelings, but they're all sad. You know what I mean? It's just like all the time. I feel like they put out sadness too. So that's the other thing, is these kinds of music that are designed to like really feed on people's emo and angst and everything.
For sure.
I mean,
yeah, and those get a lot of push too. Those get a big mainstream push.
Man, are we gonna live in a world though? Like, because like, what's that movie with the
Scanner Darkly?
Oh God, Bruce Wayne, Patrick Bateman, Patrick Bateman, played by
Jason Bateman, Patrick Bateman.
Yeah,
American Psycho?
Christian Bale. Equilibrium. I think you're doing it. That might be right. I think you did it. The Ninja Fu with Gun Fu. Yeah. So are we gonna live in a world though? Because like, this is the thing. If we start to be like afraid of how mind control is effective, then we can't listen to music anymore. Then we can't watch movies anymore. We get all afraid. Like,
look, I think that the answer is to consume consciously. So like, when it comes to music is an auto-alchemical tool. You can use it to auto-regulate your own mood and choose what you want to put into your system. You can look at the lyrics, you can feel the vibration, and actually make that choice instead of just, listening to the radio or listening to whatever they tell you to listen to, or listening to whatever's popular or trendy, or even, listening to whatever your id wants to indulge. Like, you can actually make that choice and consume things that are good for you, that are synchronized with your life goals and your life purpose.
Have you guys seen Strawberry Mansion?
No, what's that one?
So there's this dude, because you said that, it was making me think of Dan Deacon. Dan Deacon's a great musician. He does a lot of like 432 positive electronica and stuff. Hey,
yeah, well, one of my favorite songs. When I was done dying, that song is just amazing,
dude. And you can do it.
But so he did. That's great too.
He did this soundtrack for this movie Strawberry Mansion, and Strawberry Mansion is this incredible movie where this guy is an auditor for the corporation, and he finds this lady who hasn't been paying her dream taxes. And the way it works is when you see something in your dreams, you have to pay a tax on it because that's a likeness of something that came from the real world. Only none of her things are things from the real world. She's actually creating her own dreams, which is very irregular and kind of illegal. So he goes there and finds she has all of these tapes of all of these dreams, and he has to dispose of all the tapes, but he just can't bring himself to do it because they're just full of just such amazing, like, unconventional dreams. And then every night he goes to sleep, and there's this sponsor from the corporation who's there as his buddy and keeps him in the room and doesn't let him outside and keeps trying to hand him new products all the time fed into his dreams. So it's this brutal. Yeah, Strawberry Mansion is crazy, man. But
that one's on the list, man. Yeah, thank you.
Has anyone watched Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Yeah, that's a good one.
I highly recommend this movie.
Yeah, that one's
Andreas,
funky.
you'll love it.
Right. I haven't seen this yet. I've been meaning to. I will get this done. That's awesome.
Yeah, that one's worth it. That's the what's her face, Crouching Tiger chick.
Yeah, the Kung Fu.
Drop just a tiny bit of acid before watching it.
There you go. I do always recommend David Syncflix. If you guys ever need some crazy stuff to watch, go to thesyncbook.com and go to the picture of Judy Garland from the Dark Side of the Oz, because here you can watch every synchronicity, and he will, they like Dark Side of Oz, like with the Dark Side of the Moon with Wizard of Oz. He's got like Lana Del Rey or whatever with everything else, Belladonna and Infinite Sadness, this crazy like lost Japanese animation movie from the 70s with Belladonna from Stevie Nicks. And so he does a pretty good job figuring out which movies in Hollywood they weren't allowed to, put some corporation was not working with another corporation. So the band and the movie makers secretly made a soundtrack combination. And like, they're all up here. You can watch all the scenes, which is pretty crazy.
So the sync book, huh?
That was what the syncbook.com.
Sync book. Actually, here's about a good time to start introducing where to get some of your content. Kevin, what about you? Where would I go for your stuff?
Same, man. It's at Bandcamp. Bandcamp or Instagram. I got new videos I got to drop on Instagram from a club set last weekend. So
I'm on a new computer. Can you remind me what I have to type?
Yeah, let me get it.
I think I found it. Hold on. There we go. It worked out.
There we go.
Sweet. Soldovich. Sold out. Soldo. Get it? Come on, guys. It's brilliant.
That's funny.
I really love this album. And he's a pretty funny guy. And you can buy this in Canadian money, which I hear is more colorful. So
yeah, it's a deal. I think it's only like 60 cents American or something. $15 Canadian.
More colorful, more worthless.
Inflation.
It makes up for it. Yeah, I did get a Canadian donation the other day. I was like, awesome. Oh, yeah, it was funny.
That hurts.
Dude, American Time Machine. Also, Kurt, your music's amazing. I'm just going to load up right here. It'll come up. I swear it will. Come on,
Thank
Internet.
you.
Don't fail me now. There it is. American Time Machine. Some of the greatest music in the world. You got Amish kids, seriously, sneaking out of their barns at night so they can get a copy of this. This is the Golden Ratio, American Time Machine by Kurt Weidorfer. Beautiful stuff.
Thank you.
But yeah, definitely get this album. I'm not kidding. Like, I listen to this unironically all the time. Oof, really important to me for a couple reasons. If you guys have done the NLgram thing, you guys know about this? So if you're looking for the Ngram viewer, that's what it is. Google here will tell you they get all the books in history, they scrape them all together, and they find the use of a word. So let's do bucket list. Bucket list, for instance, proven that no one really talked about bucket list until the movie Bucket List. And everyone's like, whoa, it was invented then. Who knew? It's a new idea, right? But do oof. Bam.
But wait a minute, that doesn't even make sense, man. Look at to kick the bucket was always an expression, wasn't it?
Right, from Shakespeare. But the bucket list.
So there you go. So to kick the bucket, so people must have created Bucket List before the movie.
Yeah, they just didn't call it the bucket list. That's all.
Unless it's a
brand.
mandala effect. It could be a mandala effect. But this is interesting. You look at oof, and I showed you the 1800s. It had a big spike for a while, but it kind of stayed around here because this is a lot of the Slavic and Scandinavian people, oofta. But then there's just this giant spike of oof that happened in the 1540s and 30s. And I got to wonder, like, how much oof was going down in the 1530s and 40s? Because it must have been insane.
The great oof.
The great oof of 1530s. Like, it must have been so much oof. I don't know. That's my thought. Vincent, I'm going to go to your mid-trip journey in your Facebook group and your YouTube. Oh, your YouTube,
sure.
For sure. Let's do that first.
YouTube's there. So I'm working on another video. It's going to be coming out probably in a day or two. Currently finishing the painting for it. So this one is it's going to be audio. It's going to be about basically musical alchemy. So the function.
You guys send me your link. It's not coming up for me.
What? I sent it.
Oh, you did? I'm just silly.
Here, here's the current painting. So you get a preview.
I don't see it sent.
It's
I
put it in.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. It's a couple down. Burning Sage Saga. That's right. Yeah, so you did the Santaism, which is pretty hilarious and awesome.
Yeah.
But talking about the darkness of Santa, and you do these amazing.
Well, the dark use of Santa, basically. So the way that he's been manipulated by corporations for as basically a secular god of consumerism, versus the original function as well as the original myths. And talking about Amadine and Mascaria, the psychedelic aspect of all this, and cocaine in the Coca-Cola.
Yeah, this is really fun if you like to watch someone paint, you want to learn about painting, but also he tells you this amazing backstory and history about what he's going on about and like the mythology behind what he's painting. And it's always so much deeper. Like you've heard of Santa Claus, but there's so many myths and layers that go back. So it's a cool thing to like vibe out to. So I highly recommend Vincent's Burning Sage Saga channel. It's really cool stuff. Awesome.
Dope.
Simon, you want me to tell you where to go get Simon? So go to tartarinova.com and you can go to the Discord. Go to the Discord. If you click on the Discord link, you can talk to Simon. Not bad. All right. Thank you guys for putting up with me. That's pretty good. Kevin, I love you. Kurt.
Love you, pal.
Vincent. Simon.
Love you, bro.
Canada is a country. Waves of people came to this country, were welcomed by the folks who have lived here for millennia, the First Nation. And built this society with waves of people fleeing religious persecution, fleeing tyranny, fleeing to try and build a better life for themselves here than they had back home. Whether it's folks fleeing from world wars or fleeing from civil wars, these people always want the same thing: to be able to live in peace, to raise their families, create a better future for themselves and their communities. And that is what generations created, this extraordinary diverse society we have. Now, Canada remains one of the only countries in the world where citizens are, by and large, positively inclined. And one of the reasons we are that way is because Canadians have confidence in our